I'm joined by Jane Holl, President and CEO of the Council on Cybersecurity, formerly with the Department of Homeland Security. So nice to see you here at the Fortune event in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for sitting down with me.
And you really are on a hot button topic, and that's cybersecurity. So let's just get the first question out right away. Are American corporations adequately protected from cyber threats right now today?
The answer is no. And I think, though, the reason that I say that would surprise you. It's not because they're not spending a lot of money, they are. But it's basically because we're not doing the fundamentals, the basic cyber hygiene that would really prevent or mitigate 80 to 90% of most of the attacks we're seeing.
Okay, what does that mean, cyber hygiene?
You know, we all brush our teeth, we floss, we visit the dentist twice a year. You know, the alternative, of course, is to manage your oral hygiene by root canal. No one recommends it. I mean, let's do the basics. And so for cybersecurity, basic cyber hygiene, we have a list of those called the critical security controls. It's a list of the most important things to do first. And it begins with knowing what's connected to your network, knowing what's running or trying to run on your systems and network, managing and limiting the people who have the administrative permission to wander around your network and gain access to things they shouldn't have. And then also having in place an automated system to detect anomalies and to cue you into taking appropriate security measures. So
that begs the question, what is everyone spending their money on if they're spending all this money and they're not doing that?
Right, they're spending their money on buying high-end expertise to develop an individuated understanding of the threat you're facing. And that may be necessary, but what's really true is that we're all on the same net. We're all on the same internet. We're all facing a large degree of the same problems. Just as when we go out into the environment, we're facing a lot of the same germs. But I don't send my daughter to school and brief her on streptococcal this and meningococcal that. I said, wash your hands, cough into your sleeve, don't share food. The basic hygiene that will prevent a lot of the dangerous germs from causing her problems.
So it seems that, at least when you look at the headlines, some industries are more vulnerable. We think of the retail industry, there was that Home Depot hack. Are certain industries more vulnerable?
I don't think it's a contest. I think every industry is vulnerable. Look, I don't think there's an enterprise in the marketplace that delivers value without relying on its IT and access to the internet. And there's not a single enterprise that isn't vulnerable and has already been subject to significant attack. The real problem is that we're not executing basic hygiene measures to lower the noise level, prevent and rapidly mitigate known risks, because a lot is known about the risk environment out there, and then turning our attention to the specialized threats that we may be facing as a company or as an industry.
So since you worked in government, what is the government responsibility? We know we're always worried about hacking from China or some other country. Should government play a role, or are there so many cybersecurity companies out there that a government role is not needed?
Well, this is the debate that's been sort of going on in some circles for several years now. Is cybersecurity, isn't this a problem that the market can and should handle? Or is it so specialized, so dangerous, and so high-end that only government, only the military can solve this problem for us? In my view, both extreme positions are wrong. We don't ask the market to handle anything by itself. And so really, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are three interesting questions that we don't have the answers to. Question number one, how do we architect systems we can trust from components we can't? Question number two, how do we ensure the integrity of our information and our identity in an open internet? And question number three, your question, what should the role of government be? Government does have a lot of information about what's happening, but up until relatively recently treated major cyber intrusions as a matter for the intelligence community or the national security establishment exclusively. And businesses, for their part, up until relatively recently, treated major intrusions as a nuisance or the price of doing business. And I think everyone's role has changed, and the government in many ways can point the way to best practice. That's what the NIST framework does, and in the back of the NIST framework it points out, there are things that you can do to prevent or mitigate some of these measures, and the critical controls are part of that.
How do you manage through a cyber attack? as a company? What's the best practices to do?
The best practices fall into three categories. First of all, establish a way to find out what's going on that's reliable and that will keep you informed over the course of the crisis. And there are a number of steps. We offer a crisis response bulletin at the Center for Internet Security that's accessible for company executives and leaders in the public and private sector. So the first thing is establish what's happening and a way to keep yourself reliably informed. Secondly, do something about it. It may range from trying to isolate that network to taking other steps to mitigate and limit the damage that's being caused. And the third thing to do is communicate what you know. Not only what you're doing about what's happened, what you know about what's happened, what you're doing about it, and the measures you had in place to prevent an event like this from happening to begin with. Again, in each of those categories, there are a number of steps, but that's the basic approach.
And I guess we should not feel that secure.
We can't take anything for granted. There's nothing you can do online confident that your information or your identity is not subject to compromise. But enterprises can and should take basic hygiene measures. And there are, of course, other things as well. Basic hygiene isn't a silver bullet. It won't do all that needs doing. But it is a good way to start to reduce your exposure to known risks and threats.
Jane Holl, great to talk to you at Fortune's The Most Powerful Women Summit. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.